Thank you, President Healy, members of the Babson Board, faculty, administration, my brother Eric, my son James, I promised I'd say that, and of course, to the class of 2018, it really is an honor to stand here before you and share in your day. Many of you have traveled far and wide to be a part of today's ceremony, some more than half the globe, to recognize those that have successfully navigated their way to the completion of a Babson education. And while some of you always knew you would get the privilege to go to college, for others, I know today is a dream come true. With over 260 million kids today denied access to a primary and secondary education, I know all too well just how far from reach a college education can be. I remember my own graduation day, almost 40 years ago to the day today, and I remember that I attended an all-night farewell party the night before, and that I was still suffering from it as I tried to put on my cap and gown. And I remember the look of pride on my mom and dad's face, especially because I was the first girl in my family to graduate from college. And thank you. And I remember that it was a sunny day. But in all honesty, I do not remember a word of what my commencement speaker said. So I hope I do a little bit better today. I have a picture, and it's a picture that stays in my mind with absolutely everything that I do. And it's a picture of a little girl, 6 years old, standing on a dock, holding the hand of her 4-year-old brother, getting ready to board a ship bound for a country that neither of them knows, that speaks a language that neither of them speak, and to which they are traveling with neither their mother nor their father, but instead with a woman whose last name they know, but whose first name they will never know, because once they arrive in their new country, they will never see her again. The year is 1939. The little girl is my mom, the little boy, her brother, my uncle. And they're bound for America because the Nazis have invaded Vienna, and as Jews, the only way their parents can save their lives is to make the heart-wrenching decision to send them away to an orphanage on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, hoping that the separation would not be too long. I heard that story from the time I was old enough to listen. My mom emphasizing the woman who brought them to the USA, not the horrors that forced them to leave, teaching all of us at a very early age that one person can indeed make a difference. By contrast, my grandfather also boarded a ship, the SS St. Louis, often called the Voyage of the Damned. Over 1,000 Jews and sympathizers fled Europe on that ship, most having paid dearly with everything they owned to buy passage to Cuba, only to ultimately learn the documents they purchased were forgeries and that they were not going to be let in to Cuba. And they sat in Cuba's harbor for 40 days while the world debated their fate, ultimately returning them to Europe, where most perished at the hands of the Nazis. But my grandfather lived, and he made sure we understood what happens when the world turns its back and when no one gives a damn. And these two lessons combined to turn our entire family into activists. From the moment our arms were strong enough to hold a sign, my mom reinforced that if we were not part of the solution, we weren't just part of the problem, we were the problem. Together, Together with my mom, we marched for civil rights, we marched against a war, we stood for women's rights, for gay rights. I learned the value of standing up for what I believed in and the ways in which doing so makes my life worth living. And as you leave Babson, don't just plan your career, find your voice. Use it often. Consider the things you will do that will allow you to feel fulfilled. You are the single largest generation in human history, 80 million strong. You will make up 50% of the workforce by 2020. You will run America for 40 years straight, longer than any other generation. You are the most globally aware generation, seeing the world without borders, and are the most educated, optimistic, and plugged-in generation in human history. You are also the generation that will inherit a $59 trillion wealth transfer from your predecessors. You will dictate how the digital and consumer worlds reach their constituents. You grew up with things like mandatory service hours as early as kindergarten onwards. You can and you will change the world as we know it today, and change is desperately needed. As I thank you. As I stand here today with you, the world is bearing witness to the largest number of kids on the move since World War II. 50 million children. 50 million children are wandering our planet today. 29 million forcibly removed from their homes. 50 million kids sleeping on rocks instead of on beds, out of school, taking great risks in the hope of finding a more secure and safe future. If we do nothing, we will lose an entire generation. Children do not get to pick where they're born. And if they did, they surely would not pick poverty or a conflict zone. Children are the victims of the adults of politics. Politics of adults. They find themselves displaced. They find themselves hungry and alone through no fault of their own. And we need to stop calling them refugees, stop calling them migrants, stop calling them displaced people, see them for what they are. They are children. I pray that your generation will create a world more fit for children than the one my generation is leaving you. When I sat in your seats 40 years ago, I had no idea I would end up running UNICEF USA, or that I would even dedicate the majority of my career to the world's children. I earned my bachelor's degree in the very lucrative field of studio art, and only because the Metropolitan Museum of Art was not yet interested in buying one of my paintings did I end up agreeing to a teaching fellowship at Western Illinois University in Macomb, Illinois, a rural, somebody's heard of it, thank you, a rural community whose primary claim to fame was that it's 250 cornfield-filled miles from both Chicago and St. Louis. And for this New York City Jewish girl, it was a place that was both beautiful and foreign. I spoke differently, I dressed differently, I practiced a different religion, and I struggled to find a way to cross cultural differences while staying true to who I was. That experience propelled me into an 18-year career in jobs that moved the needle on diversity. But it also taught me that while my formal studies had given me a foundation of knowledge that I would forever be grateful for and I would call upon throughout my life, it really would be the experiences I would encounter along the way that would define my life path. I learned the power of having a plan that was not too rigid, that could morph as I did, allowing me to take turns I did not even know existed until I came upon them. So plan, but don't lock yourselves out of the opportunities that might alter your plan. And just before my 50th birthday, one such opportunity came my way. UNICEF USA called and offered me the CEO job. It has afforded me the privilege of serving the world's children, but equally important, it has challenged me to learn, challenged me to experience difficulties I had never before considered, and filled my life with true purpose. It has enabled me to deliver nutrients in the Horn of Africa, develop programs for disabled kids in Vietnam, help with the earthquake response in Haiti, open wells in Malawi, work in refugee camps in Darfur, Kakuma, and most recently Zatari in Jordan. I've worked in over 40 countries, and whenever kids see our blue shirts, our blue UNICEF shirts, they come running. And they hang on our arms and our legs, and they walk with us until boredom sets in. But there are always some shyer kids, some kids who walk behind us. They never quite make eye contact with us, but they stay with us all day, quietly watching. And most recently in the Zatari camp, when we began work at about 5 a.m., there behind us was a little boy, 3 or 4 years old, with his 12-year-old sister and a baby she carried on her hip. They stayed with us all day, and at 5 p.m. as we were wrapping up, we realized we had not eaten all day, which meant these 3 kids had not eaten all day. They'd not complained, they'd never asked for food, making us realize they were accustomed to not eating all day. Earlier, we had been in a breastfeeding tent where young moms were being given nutritional biscuits in an effort to ensure that they were able to provide sustenance to their babies. We too were given biscuits, but truly just because I was trying to avoid carbs, we had quietly palmed our biscuits and hid them in our backpacks. And realizing now that these kids were hungry, we gave a biscuit to the little boy, expecting him to kind of run off and quickly gobble down this very treasured piece of food. About 20 of us in blue shirts watched as he took that biscuit, looked at it, opened it up, and without anyone saying anything, this little 3 or 4-year-old boy broke it in half and gave half to the baby. All 20 of us wept. And I tell you this story because if this child, who had nothing, really nothing, shared what little he was given, just imagine what you could share. So I stand here today to challenge you to remember you can make a difference, that your life will be much more fulfilled if you do. I challenge you to make a plan, but to allow for unexpected turns. I challenge you to take the gifts Babson has given you and use them wisely. And I challenge you to dig deep in your backpacks, find whatever biscuits you possess, and share them with others. I promise you, you will not regret doing so. Congratulations, class of 2018. Make us proud. Thank you.